Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. On this week's show, we are going to recap the Fight Pass Invitational 11 headlined by Ffion Davies versus Adele Fornarino 2, their rematch. And that is it. Worlds is happening for IBJJF right now. We were actually recording as the finals, I think, have just started. So that's going to be another 3 or 4 or 6 hours. So we are going to cover all of that next week. Again, we were talking about it last week that we might bump Worlds. It came to be, so instead of basically doing this weird half show where we half cover Fight Pass Invitational, because there's some really fun matches on that card, and then kind of cover Worlds, and it's a big 3-hour epic show, break them into 2 weeks. It'll give us another week to kind of analyze the most interesting stuff at Worlds. May even be able to get into some of the quarters matches and the semis matches that we usually don't have time for. So that's what we're doing. As always on the show, I am your host, Maine, joined by co-host
Zach.
How you doing, Zach?
Pretty good.
Doing pretty good. I realize I have your mic kind of turned sideways. There we go. Okay, we're good to go now.
All better.
So yeah, honestly, we don't have a ton of news this week. Worlds is happening. There's been some interesting matchups already in Worlds. Again, we're going to cover that fully next week. We're not previewing anything. We're not doing anything except covering FPI 11. I don't really have even a whole lot of news. It's been kind of a relatively quiet week, generally speaking. I know I'm forgetting something. ADCC Trials has been announced. We have CGI 2 tickets, I think, are also out now. We're all kind of discussing internally, like, are we going to go? We're not going to go? Yeah. Who's going to go?
Sponsored by Toehold now.
Yeah, that was you've missed that. Yeah, Craig has been putting in the time when it comes to social media marketing between Flo and trolling Craig as per usual, and everything, which is funny because New Wave has a team which theoretically, with John kind of out now, Gordon is the new head coach of that team, so he's directly trolling a team that will be in his event, and honestly, potentially a front runner for that event, given the strength of that squad. So it just makes me really funny of, like, I cannot imagine what it would be like to deal with Craig on 11. If Craig decides that you're gonna be a guy that he fucks with, I cannot imagine what that is like.
It's world class trolling, and I'm absolutely in love with it.
One of the best guys in MMA and Jiu-Jitsu to do it. So that is coming up. We have that in a couple months. Let's just move right into it. We have a lot to cover today. We're just going to talk about the main card for FPI. So really all the main matches that were on the broadcast, which I actually think for FPI actually is all of them. They don't run dark matches before.
I don't think so.
Credit where I would say it like this. Credit where credit's due. Dude, the length of this card is exactly what I want from a jiu-jitsu card. 2 hours, 33 minutes.
Yeah, you could watch the whole thing without really being annoyed.
And that's the thing. Is like,
there was not downtime in between in the way that I wanted to see. Like, it went smooth.
Last 2 matches are the last hour of the broadcast, and I'm like, perfect. Like, that's like, I didn't get a chance to watch it live because it's been a very busy week. For context, in the last 7 days, I have driven 45 hours.
Sounds terrible.
It was not. I did the math on it. I was like, that's not my favorite. Driving 3 hours back from DC on Tuesday was made me want to kill myself, Zach. It was not great.
Gross.
So watched it after the fact, and I saw the whole match, and I was like, oh, this is like, I can sit down and just like put on, like, get some ramen or get some food and just hang out and watch the card. And it did, and it was great. And we were in 58 minutes, and the co-main was walking out, and I went, oh, this is the perfect pacing. It was good.
They got a little lucky with some subs, but the rules also encourage that. So I think the timing works out well because the way that the event was set up, the rules were set up to do that. I think it was great.
So let's talk about rules, because this is the first event for FPI that has run under essentially what is unified MMA rules and scoring. I talked about it a little bit last week. Like, I think I am the minority on the team for Grappling Rewind that, like, I don't like rounds in jiu-jitsu. That being said, I think we're kind of figuring it out, and I'm getting more used to seeing it in jiu-jitsu. And I'm also, I think if the goal is to grow the sport. UFC is putting money into the sport, trying to grow it, and I think they're going, there's all these weird competing rule sets in jiu-jitsu. Some of them are hard to understand. You really have to have innate knowledge to understand why they work, why they don't work. If you are an MMA fan and you are watching jiu-jitsu, just having it be rounds is like, yep, I understand this. It's the framework of the sport. It's how every other combat sport works aside from, like, like judo. Like most other,
Yeah.
even mat sports, like have rounds, and so it gives you kind of say you win rounds, you earn points, you get whatever, and then at the end of it, you are judged on how well you did in those rounds. It is something that is easy to make sense of as a fan of MMA, which is the target audience for this. Again, I personally always say it. I like the way the ADCC does it the best. I think it makes the most exciting matches. It pushes for the most exciting matches. But UFC did something that we bitched about last week on Fury. The referee can call for action.
Well, so that's nice. I want to touch on rounds, though, too, because a nice thing that rounds does is it gives the opportunity for athletes to breathe for a second, and just 30 seconds to a minute off in between the middle of a 15-minute long match allows for a better pace of action. When you have a full 15-minute match and there's no time in between, or a 10-minute match and there's no time in between, those last couple minutes are exhausting, maybe some interesting things happen, but still, everyone's not at their top shape in that, and sometimes the strategy then becomes waste 5 minutes and then give me a 5-minute match. And rounds allows for breath, which allows for more action, and I think we did see that for the most part in this event.
And what we've talked about, we're going to cover IBJJF Worlds next week. Those are 10 minutes for the adult black belt matches. 90% of those matches, the first 2 minutes are feeling out. The last 2 minutes are
real,
or like if you're up, like holding on.
Oh, sure.
Holding on, waiting. So it's like you have about 6 minutes of that match, which is why AJP goes to a 6-minute match, which is why I like the 6 and 8 minute matches of ADCC. 15 minutes is too long in grappling for a continuous one-shot run, unless it's like a specialty match between two guys. Like you put Cade and Tackett in there. Cade and Andrew Tackett in there. You can have that be a 30-minute match. That's going to run at pace. I like the rounds because why? Those guys can run at pace. You give them a little break. They can keep that pace up. Again, I think, especially for this event, seeing it now more and more in grappling, I do think, generally speaking, we get a higher level of action. My only problem is in matches where you don't have action, when you have two guys or two women that are just hand in hand, not shooting, not doing anything, you have to watch that 3 different times for 3 rounds. And so it's like if there are athletes that are not going to push the action and not get it to the mat, you have to keep watching that whole boring exchange where they're not doing anything over and over. That's my only kind of downside.
Yeah, but we see Worlds matches where they're on their feet for 10 minutes doing nothing too. So
absolutely,
I don't think that's that big of a difference. The issue that I have with the rules, and this is very obvious with the first match we'll talk about, Ffion versus Adele, and maybe we'll give some more detail about why it's frustrating for me there, but is the clarity on scoring it's just too ambiguous for me. It's hard to predict who is actually winning because it's unclear how they are scoring things. And I wish that there was a couple changes would make this much more exciting to me. One would be open scoring after the rounds. And I think CJI did this. They would let you know who won the round afterwards. So going into round 3, the athletes and the crowd knew where things stood. And so that lack of ambiguity there was, I think, really useful in CJI. And I would like to see something like that.
Open scoring, I think I've talked about it for all combat sports. Like you should have open scoring. Like what other sport do you have? Like imagine like a US football game where it's like the half ends and you're like, I wonder who's up. Or like a basketball game where they're not keeping score. You're like, but someone's winning this. You guys have the score that you have. Why wouldn't you share that? Because if you don't share it, the old school thought for having closed scoring was that, well, the athletes are going to fight harder because they don't know who's winning. But like nowadays, it's a sport. It's a modern sport. And so give the athletes the framework. Hey, man, you're up 2 rounds.
Yep.
Inform how you want to fight your 3rd round because within every or
you're down 2 rounds. The only way you win this is a sub. That gets wild, right? Because that person can really go aggressive and
like, hey man, I'm already losing anyway. I'm already going to lose here. I have no reason to not overextend myself. I want some like moral victory of not getting submitted, but I have no reason to not overextend myself. Versus some of these matches, I think we saw here. You have we're close on the cards. Maybe I won it. Maybe I didn't want it. I'm going to kind of keep doing the same strategy and not change my strategy going to round 3 because I may or may not be up. And so it's like, I think I'm winning on the cards. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Open scoring should be a requirement for all combat sports, I think. But in this, I think it would be great to see like, hey, judges gave this. They did it in CJI. Yeah. And I think that's like the best thing to do. And we talked about it on the recaps for CJI, like, give the athletes that respect of like, hey, you're down and you're down by 1 point. Go next round.
I would also like to see, in addition to, and this was an issue at CGI, or one of the things that I didn't like about CGI, is I would like to see, in addition to open scoring on the rounds, I would like to see judges' scorecards be available, maybe not in the middle of the match, but afterward. Right? That's something that you see in MMA a lot.
Yeah.
You have the number of strikes and things like that the different judges were keeping track of and believed that was a significant strike or not, and where they're scoring takedowns and things like that. Like it's the ambiguity is really hard because, well, let's talk about Ffion and Adele a bit.
Yeah, so we've talked about, again, it's the new 10-point must format for jiu-jitsu. I think CGI is now using it as well, but no open scoring. So
Yeah.
Fidel versus, so we previewed this one last week. Some context for the matchup. This is the matchup that I have wanted to see since Adele won ADCC. And Ffion was the under 60 kilogram champion the last time the ADCC only had 2 women's weight classes.
2022.
She beats Adele in the first round of that tournament.
And Adele was not really particularly well known at that time.
No, she was the trials winner, which typically, and most talk about this, typically the guys from the Asian and Oceanic trials and the women are like seated lower, because they typically do not have a huge amount of success when it comes to the world championships, and that can also become potentially because of their seeding, but that's a whole different story. And so Adele was seated low against Ffion, loses to Ffion by sub in the first round. But again, I've looked at this. Adele was like 22 there.
Yep.
Like she was 22, 23. She was young. I didn't realize how young she was in that first matchup. She's 25 now. Ffion is 30. And Adele then went on in 2024, the year that Ffion was at CGI versus Mackenzie Dern in that super fight, to go win the first inaugural women's under 55 kilogram division, and then win the first modern era absolute for women as one of the smallest grapplers in that division, cementing herself as like, yeah, you're the top dog, the top woman in this, in this sport here, taking this. So this was your 22 champion and your 24 champion going at it. Again, different weight classes, which I don't think for this matchup really mattered very much, because Adele, even since ADCC, looks like she's put on some more muscles, and Ffion looks about like Ffion kind of has always looked physique-wise. And like, so I don't think that there was a big size disparity here between the two athletes.
It didn't look like it. And so, for this match, it was every round started with a double guard pull, which I was kind of surprised, because one of the things that I would think going into this, and I think that it was apparent throughout the earlier matches, was that takedowns were being scored pretty highly. And so it was weird to me. It felt like that, given Ffion's style, that Ffion would have been able to score something off of the takedown against Adele, who wants to be playing guard anyway. So I was kind of surprised strategically that Ffion wasn't playing on her feet a little bit more and trying to get the takedowns for those points.
In my eyes, it was, and this is kind of my thought. This is a weird match, first of all, for me to kind of break down, just because the areas that I typically key into, there weren't a lot of in this match. I think Adele pulls before Ffion really has an opportunity to start getting a lot going on the feet. And so Adele, if Adele's not willing to stand, didn't want to stand because she wants to be in guard anyway, and Ffion is a good top pressure passer, like, why wouldn't you just elect to play into the area that she pulls into?
Well, earlier in the day too, and again, maybe this is just people not really having a full understanding of where the rules are and how they're going to be judged and reffed, but earlier in the day, there was a guard pass or two without contact, or that would have been, a little bit questionable, and the refs made them stand back up. So I think there was potentially, if they were playing by the same rules, there's potential that the ref maybe would have made Adele stand back up if she wasn't engaging.
Yeah.
So anyways, it was the double guard pull was surprising to me, I think. But then the first round was basically 5 minutes of knee shield. Adele was making attempts to go into false reap pretty regularly, was attempting to move into the Choi bar situation pretty regularly.
I think
I just don't. They were weak attempts.
Yeah, I think moving to, and this is what this is the discussion we've had for years and years and years on this show, where it's pick your promotion, pick how they see attempts, pick how they how highly they rate those attempts. For me, we've always talked about like a submission attempt. If your criteria is submission attempts, which is not what the criteria is for FPI. Is a submission that requires defense. You have to be on something enough that the person that is being submitted has to do something to get out of that. Yeah. And for me, if I'm looking at these entries from Adele, Fion's not doing a whole lot
Sure.
to like really, she's kind of changing her range a little bit and then resetting,
Yeah.
as opposed to being like required to make a large movement out of whatever Adele is doing.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think that any of those things were submission attempts, but where I do think that that in my eyes, based on the judging or the way that things are supposed to be scored here, that would be giving her points on the lowest criteria, which is aggression, right? And so it was positional dominance and then aggression were the two like last factors that were being considered for the judging. And I would
For
put
this
her
match
up.
are the two criteria we're kind of looking at.
That's what we're working at,
Yeah.
right? And so I don't think that I don't call being on top in guard in jiu-jitsu positional dominance.
But
I think that two of the judges did. But that was kind of what I was getting towards at the beginning of this conversation, was just that it's unclear to me what the judges were scoring and how they were viewing any of these things. And so open scorecards would help that, because then we would know, okay, two of the judges thought that just flat out being on top in any way possible is positional dominance. Whereas I think traditionally in jiu-jitsu, we don't necessarily look at the person on top in a guard as being in the dominant position. It's considered a neutral position in most cases.
Yeah.
And so if I'm looking at that as a neutral position, then I'm thinking, okay, who was more aggressive? Who was trying to set up what they were doing more? And in my eyes, it was Adele in this case, because she was entering into the false reap, which, she didn't really land anything off of it, but she was trying to progress her position. Right. Same thing with the Choi bar. Whereas Ffion, she would stand up occasionally. She would lean into the knee cut. I don't think any of those were like very significant attempts. And what really gets me with this is that anytime that Adele did really start setting something up, Ffion, like you said, changed ranges. She backed out.
Yeah.
Right. She ran away from every exchange that Adele tried to initiate. And so if she's running away from every exchange that Adele's trying to initiate, I would say that that's, not position dominance.
Yeah.
So
in how I understood this to be scored is exactly like it's scored in MMA. Where it's like, unless you are actively like in the process of submitting someone from your back, if you are on the bottom, you are losing.
Sure.
And which I think is how, based on the result here, how it's scored. But again, with us, we watch a lot of jiu-jitsu. It's like typically guard is neutral. So it's like if you're doing something from guard, traditionally you're going to be winning. Like in other jiu-jitsu rule sets, I think Adele probably cleanly takes this.
Yeah.
But in this rule set, I think when you're looking at MMA scoring criteria, it's like if you are on bottom and you are not actively putting them away, you're losing. And so when we talk about these kind of events, that's sort of the frustrating point, is like we are super hardcore fans of like submission grappling and jiu-jitsu. The athletes are unfortunately have to fight in a bunch of different rule sets across all organizations, and then you get to judging criteria and it's like, well, that wins you in these rule sets but not this rule set and not this rule set. And we are fortunate enough, honestly, to be able to cover all of these so frequently that like I can look at a rule set and go, okay, cool, I think this rule set is their criteria. But athletes don't have the luxury to be able to like be that fluid with their game at the highest levels. It's like I can't suddenly ask Adele or Ffion to drastically change their game, because you're going against the best other woman in the world. Like if you then change your game and you're a little off by a tiny margin, you're going to get submitted, because that's the level that these two women are on. And so it's a bit frustrating from us as like analysts to talk about that in the context of like, well, any other rule set, Adele's going to be seen as the aggressor, like an IBJJF. She would be the guard player. She would win this probably pretty cleanly. In IBJJF, it's a different rule set. And so that's why, again, back to the open scoring decision is like when the criteria is wonky across the sport that we do between, again, both these women are ADCC champions. Does this match, does Ffion win this in ADCC? Does Adele win this in ADCC? Well, I think Adele wins this in ADCC. It's
probably. It's tough, but at least, I mean, so I think open scoring would have helped this, because it would have been clear that Adele lost round one. Right after round one, which was a lot of guard play in my eyes, from like looking at this as more of a jiu-jitsu standpoint, Adele probably wins that. The judges' eyes here are probably looking at this from more of an MMA standpoint, which is, I could argue about that, but I'm not going to.
We have time, Zach. If you want,
we
to
do.
get in a rabbit hole, man.
I mean, it just kind of sucks, because you're coming into this from a sport where everyone trains as if guard is neutral for the most part, and then you put them in a rule set where that's not the case anymore. And just every single time Adele is going to lose 9 out of 10 of these matches if that's the way that you're playing, because Ffion wants to be on top and Adele wants to be on the bottom. And so Adele has a massive uphill climb for this. And so I think if you wanted these matches to be interesting and you're going to stick with like the MMA focused positional dominance judging, then you can't select people like Adele to be your headline. You just you have to pick two people that want to be on top 100% of the time. And then
it's unfortunate because it's like I want to see Adele here, but it's like if that's going to be her criteria,
she's going to lose it.
She's going to lose it because like that's where she does her best work. That's where she is one of the best. I mean, it's her and Ffion, the best women in the world. Like that's where she wants to play from, and it's like Brianna St. Murray.
Yep.
Really hard for her unless she can put the woman that she's fighting away because why? Because she wants to play from the bottom. So it's like that's one of my problems with when you have an MMA style scoring criteria that sees like top and bottom position as like good or bad.
Yeah.
It's like bottom half guard is like a phenomenal position for plenty of people.
Yeah.
You know, Bernardo Faria. Like there's a bunch of guys you can point to that are phenomenal from that. But if your criteria is simply on top,
that person's losing.
And it just makes it harder. Makes it frustrating for us as people that watch a lot of different sports and jiu-jitsu to talk about. So,
but I do think open scorecards after the matches would help with this a lot because then it would make it very clear how those things were scored, so that people preparing for the FPI 12 would be able to design their prep and their game a little bit better to accommodate the rule set, right? And so open scoring round by round would help this out a lot because Adele probably would have known that they were tied up going into round 3, and it did not feel like she thought they were tied up going into round 3. And and then we would be able to adjust later.
Rounds 1 and 3 for me look the same.
Yeah,
like
they're the same.
The points we made, I don't really. You want to go into notes on round 3, but like they were round 1. Round 2 is the round that gets a little interesting here. We have a footlock attempt pretty much initiated by Adele. Mirrored footlock attempts required a little bit of defense from Ffion. She pulls out. She's on the defensive. Again, has good footlocks of her own as well. We know that she can be submitted. Again, Elizabeth Clay submitted her 2 years ago in 2023 with a toe hold. It's possible. Again, it doesn't happen very often, but it is possible.
And Adele chased it down really nicely. Like she bounced back and forth between ankles. Ffion was on the run throughout the entire entanglement sequence. I don't think there were some mirrored footlocks, but I don't think that they were realistic from Ffion. I think it was more just trying to get control of Adele's legs, but
pull hard enough to force like the readjustment. Where I got to pull my leg out here. It's like a lot of times in mirrored footlock exchanges, you have one footlock is better than the other. But the one that's maybe not as good is still tight enough where it's like, okay, temporarily I have a better footlock, but I'm not tapping them with it. I do have to address my foot out of, even though I have the better footlock technically, the other footlock is tight enough where I do have to do something out of it that maybe opens the position up, which is, again, an interesting thing that we're really seeing. We don't talk about a whole lot because I think it's really coming to prominence now of like mirrored footlocks where the worst footlock actually forces the better footlock to let go for a second to go and readjust. I think we saw that like twice here. But
then Adele did get inside control really nicely, and if you were listening with the audio, there was a very loud pop.
I couldn't tell. I listened to it twice, and the commentary talked about it, and I was like, is that a pop? Is that not a pop? Like
I think it was, and either way, when Ffion came out in round 3, she was hobbling.
Yeah.
So there was damage done. I think all the judges gave round 2 to Adele for that. Ffion was able to come back up to top and sort of maybe get an almost pass.
The second judge didn't. Oh no, split decision.
No,
Sorry.
All three judges, I think.
Split decision. I for some reason thought this was unanimous decision. This makes it. I completely had missed that until just now.
Yeah, it was split decision, and all 3 judges gave round 2 to Adele. I assume we don't actually get the round by round breakdown.
Right here.
Yeah, no, but I know we don't get the round by round breakdown, so we don't know what the 29.
Yeah, but we can assume.
We can assume.
Like, I can assume if you're not giving her the first, you're not giving her the third, and she has a round. If she's not, if you have a 29-28 and she's not getting round 2,
it doesn't make any sense at all.
It's like that. I can't even tell you what the criteria would possibly be. So I can almost assuredly say that everyone gives her the second round. The center judge gives her all 3 rounds, and the 2N judge give Ffion 2 rounds. And so it's like,
which is super confusing because the center judge giving Adele all 3 rounds means that center judge was probably viewing Adele's aggression from guard as more important than Ffion being on top, and then the other 2 judges were viewing Ffion being on top as more important than Adele's aggression from the guard. So there's always inconsistency in judges. Like that's not
Yeah,
that's not uncommon in any judging combat sport.
They're looking at it from different areas of the mat too, where it's like you're going to see a different angle. So judges are typically not all on one table; they're usually at different corners of of an octagon or of a matted area stage. For this one, they might be on one table, but typically they are spread around. And so and that's why you spread around, because one judge, because they're table side, they're mat side, one judge is going to see something and say, hey man, I can see the foot position. I know that's dangerous. Versus like, I can kind of see maybe there's an arm in there. Like I can't tell. And so you have 3 because in aggregate, they should get it correct more of the time.
But the debatable rounds here are 1 and 3, and nothing particularly dramatic happened in round 1 and 3. So I wouldn't say that these judges were seeing different things. I would say that it's more likely that they had different criteria, which is it makes it so hard on the athletes. It makes it hard on the viewers to figure out what was happening, and even
Ffion at the end. Apparently, I missed this, but somebody told me that at the end she went, it's kind of like she was.
Her interview afterward, they actually asked her why she looked surprised when they announced her as the winner, and her response was like, I don't want to win this way. I don't want this one. So it felt very much like Ffion herself was quite surprised that they gave her the win, which is telling, I think. Adele voiced her, which, I mean, it's not uncommon for the loser in a split decision to voice their distaste for the judging, but she was very respectful about it, but she did say that she disagreed with it. So I think live, the first time I watched this match, I for sure thought Adele won. The second time, I can see where we would be where I would disagree with the judges on the weighting of different positions, but it's a tough one, and I wish I had a judge's scorecard to look at and say, okay, well, this one gave points for this, and this one gave points for this, and then that makes sense. Or something
on the
like that.
other side of this, the margins are really thin. Very. I would have loved to see a bit more from both Ffion and Adele. Like, in my eyes, and I was talking with Rachel about this, like, I can't be that. I'm not upset about the decision either way. Yeah. Because very little of note happened in the first round and the last round, and so it's like I can't be too upset when it goes one way or the other. Yeah. When there was very little, not positional work, but you have a guard match for 10 minutes. Yeah. Like I can't be too upset with it. I would love to see a rematch again. Yeah. But I would love to see a slightly different game plan from both women here, where Ffion, a little more activity, Adele, a little more activity. Like, I want to see a little more from both. I can't be mad at a match where kind of so little happens. I understand why so little happening. And they're the 2 best women in the world. The margins are very thin. But as a fan, I was a bit disappointed because, like, these are the 2 top women in the world. Let me see your game. Like, let's lay the chips down a little bit and, like, show me what you can do because you're the best in the world.
Yeah, I want to see this at absolute finals in ADCC 26. Like, that's where I want to see this again. I don't want someone to just throw them in a random rule set again so that we get another discussion. Like, ADCC's, in my eyes, the gold standard rule set, and I want to see them there and do it in the finals. That would be
they're both ADCC champions. It's the match to make for me. And realistically, if Adele, so hear me out. Here's how we can get this match. Historically, when you win the absolute, you then go into the super fight. Ooh. The first year of the super fight, there is not an absolute challenger to take you on because you are the champion. So it would only make sense to either take the previous, to take one of your former champions. Yeah. Now, Ffion, again, her relationship with ADCC, we're not quite certain of, behind the scenes because she leaves as the champion to go to CJI. Like, we don't know what the relationship is like there, but it is very probable that she is. I mean, obviously, she is on the short list for who would face Adele in the absolute super fight for 26.
Was it Amy Campo that won the heavier weight?
Year prior.
24?
So it was it Geddes? I thought Geddes won. There's 3 weight classes now, and it is.
Yeah, dude, I'm getting confused about which one.
This ADCC was so hard to follow because it was 3 days of CJI, ADCC, and ADCC. And it's been every other year I can give you champions. The 24 year, man, it is so hard for me to get all of that weekend straight because it was just it was too much. But that is how we could see this again. That is where I want to see this. ADCC, please make this as your women's super fight.
Yeah, everyone wants that one.
And this is the rule set we want to see it at.
Yeah, I agree.
And they have history in ADCC.
Yep.
It's the one to make. So anything else on this, Zach?
No, I think that pretty much covers that match.
Let's move on to the next one. And now let's do Anna Carolina and Raquel Canuto after this. I want to talk about William Tackett versus Achilles Rocha.
Okie dokie. It's a quick one anyways.
30-something seconds?
30-something seconds. Tackett on the feet here. One thing that I noticed is, so they're off on the edge of the match. Tackett
By the way, this is not at 145. They kept saying it. Both these guys are like 88ers.
Okay, I thought so. They looked a little big for 45.
Yeah, and so we talked about it last week because it was listed on the preview sheet as 145. And I'm like, dude, Tackett wasn't 145 when I interviewed him in 2019. Like, he was a 55er then, I think.
And Achilles was 77 for trials.
And 88.
Achilles was 70.
Yeah.
Oh, he was at 88.
I think he goes for one of them. He goes to 80. Like, yeah, man. Like, these guys, you're not making for. I mean, dude, if you're think about this, at 77 kilos, you are 169 pounds.
Yeah.
That is an additional 25 pounds to get, right? 25, 45, 55, 65. Yeah, 25
It's a lot
pounds.
of weight. Probably not 145.
I'm guessing that this was at 85.
Yeah.
Is what I'm guessing it was. Could have been at 70, could have whatever. I'm guessing it was at 85, not 45. I just want to have that known.
So
that I'm right.
Tackett gets an under-over, not uncommon. Where things get weird, though, is it's completely unorthodox to shoot your single on your overhook side. Like, that's borderline disrespectful. Like, Tackett does an outside circle or a circle towards his underhook hand. Like, okay, fine. Not super common to usually circle away. Like, on the books, the like right way to do things is circling away from your overhook side or your underhook side. He circles toward the underhook side and then drops to a single away from the way that he circled on the overhook side, which is just why. But then also it worked. And so I feel like he must have felt that Achilles' underhook on that side was he wasn't like holding on to it very strong. It was weird technically, but worked for him. And I just need to point out that it's, how do they get away with this stuff? The Tacketts just do things sometimes
the
that they shouldn't.
wildest thing is, I saw Cody Steele's Instagram. It's a video of him and Tackett like drilling this in the back beforehand.
Stupid.
And I'm just like,
what?
Why would you do that? And it works because they're the Tackett brothers and Cody Steele.
And then even more unorthodox, instead of finishing the single leg, he just kind of yoinks the leg off in one direction and jumps on Achilles' back.
Yeah, he almost goes the Sulev stretch.
He didn't drop though. He just kind of it looked like a shuck by.
Yes.
But instead of using the underhook, he shucked the whole leg.
This is one of those
Not
things
normal.
that frustrates me as an analyst because I saw it happen. We can talk about it happening because I love this show because what this show does for me as a practitioner is I watch something like, oh, that's cool. Let me try that out. The Tacketts and the Rotolos are like, oh, cool. That's just a thing that I'm just never going to try or do or have success with. So I have to watch them just independently as an analyst of that's neat. There is a trend. Like, I think about this. We watched Isaac Michel versus Ty Rotolo. And at some point, Ty does a switch from underneath Michel over in a sit out to take mount and back. I was like, cool. I will never be able. I've tried it. I've gotten close, but the way that he does it in a live match at a world championship level versus Michelle is oh, cool. More and more, these two families of gentlemen have more and more moments of this happening every match. As an analyst, it is one of the funniest things and most frustrating things. Oh, cool. You're old now, Maine. You're just never going to be able to do this.
You couldn't do that when you were young either.
I couldn't either. But it is a pleasure to be able to watch these guys just be able to do what is traditionally seen as bad technique and just have it not be bad technique. And hey, man, I have such a good understanding of where you're going to be, where you're going, why this is going to work. That I taught a class Friday, and in that class, the series of discussion I was having in that class, I was talking about mistakes you make intentionally with thought process are just bait. It's like if you are doing something potentially like that is seen as like incorrect, but it's like you are doing it knowing where the response should be to counter that, and you get ahead of the response and you are successful, it's just bait.
Sure.
If you don't, it's bad technique. But if you get it, it was just bait. And I think this is one of those.
History's written by the victors.
Yeah.
I don't think that this was bad technique. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. It is just
bad technique.
completely unorthodox. It's the opposite of what you would teach someone to do. And the Tackets not get away with that, but the Tackets do that so much.
They do keep getting away with it. They do. I think getting away with it is the right way to put that, because like.
But it's also like there's something to say too about doing something that's unorthodox, because it's not what people are expecting. And if you can find ways to make things that are completely unorthodox and are like quote unquote wrong technique, then you might actually be able to get away with it, quote, more often, because people don't see it coming. And clearly Achilles did not see that coming.
It's like the guys that play the niche techniques. They're like, oh yeah, this guy's a warm up. This guy's but Barry Sheeta is a crucifix player. Not a lot of guys are going to ever run into a guy that is as good as good at the crucifix like Barry or Sheeta. And so you get into this guy's A game that's this wonky thing that maybe no one in your gym plays. And then suddenly you're fighting from this massive deficit because he's really good there.
Where do you have the skill deficit?
You brought this up years ago. I think when I was still a brown belt, you brought it up to me of like, because I was getting really into the crucifix, and you're like, there is merit into like being like the guy that has that niche technique and is really good at it, because you'll take people out of area of specialty into your specialty. But the Tackets, man, they keep getting away. They keep getting away with it.
They have a lot of specialties that other people don't know how to deal with. So he does this like throw by leg drag from a single kind of thing, and then just plops down into turtle on Achilles' back, because I don't think Achilles saw that coming either, and so Achilles ends up in turtle.
And then he loops the leg in a really interesting way to force Achilles down to like an all fours position. Yeah. And Achilles, what I think is happening here is Achilles is trying not to get Suleyev stretched. With the underhook or cradle. I read online, I looked at it, and I was like, maybe that's, it's like, because if that's not the reason, then Achilles sits in this spot for like a weird amount of time, not addressing the things that he should historically be addressing in the spot. And he's a good enough competitor and a good enough black belt. He's a brand new black belt. Yeah. But he's still good enough, like, as a student of his father, and like we've seen the kid grapple. Yeah. We've covered him since he was 13 or 14. Like, Achilles is one of the first kids that we covered on the show when we didn't cover kids at all. We have to talk about Achilles. Why? It's like because he's really good and because he's on this trajectory to be an adult black belt. Then, like, he was one of the kids we had to do this for. He wasn't addressing the hands or the body lock, like a couple of things that he normally would do.
Both hands on the mat in a weird way too.
Which is why I think he was trying to avoid getting stretched, like that hamstring stretch from the back. And that's what kind of online is saying, and I'm looking at it going like, I can't really think of another reason why he would have defended it that way unless that's what he was specifically trying to avoid. And then Tackett locks it up, realizes it cool, throws the choke in immediately, goes hand over back, and then you're done.
I thought, and so you might be right, because I was not looking at it from that perspective at all. The stretch is something that I'm not looking for myself very often, so maybe that's where but also at one point, Tackett had more of a seat belt, and Achilles was able to put both hands on the mat and sort of turn towards the seatbelt grip to prevent the choke from going in. And what I thought was happening was just he did that once, then Tackett adjusted his hands, and then Achilles put both hands back on the mat again, thinking he was going to be able to do the exact same thing to prevent the choke hand from coming in, and then it didn't. I also saw online somewhere that he might have been a little bit hurt or something like that and was like trying to survive, but I don't...
Achilles has been taped up for a couple of years now. So we saw him at East Coast trials, and he was like... His feet were taped. It kind of looked like Francisco Lutz, all taped up. He always has the knee braces on from when he was like 16, 17. Like my concern with Achilles is kind of the same concern I have with like Nicky Ryan, is like he's very young to be as banged up as he is. Yeah. And that's kind of my concern of like, and that's kind of what our concern was with Andrew Tackett, was like he's very young to be as banged up as he is, and it is just concerning with guys, at 18 that are like that. If you have injuries coming to matches consistently at 18, man, I wasn't that injured at 18.
Yeah,
I was
this
like
is
a tank.
a very hard sport on your body, and if you're competing at a professional level at 18, you've been hard on it. So,
and super impressive from William Tackett, though, man. Again, this is sort of how honestly I kind of thought this was going to go. Yeah, we pulled both records beforehand. We talked about it last week. Like Achilles is on the trajectory to be able to be a dry guy that wins trials consistently. He does North American trials and South American trials every year.
Yep.
He's been unsuccessful in his inability to win those. Tackett has won it twice.
Yep.
It's like just doesn't quite have the experience at the level that Tackett has yet. Tackett's 7 years older. He's 25. Achilles is 18 or 18 or 19. He can get there, but like it's just too much too soon for a guy like Tackett.
I agree. This was a tough draw for Achilles.
Yeah.
It would have been nicer to see him against someone that was closer to his professional record.
Where he is now.
But I get taking the match. If you win this, it's huge for Achilles. So good on him.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back to Ana Carolina Vieira
Right.
versus Raquel Canuto. Raquel Canuto going into this one on Fight Pass Invitational, undefeated at Fight Pass Invitational, I think. Again, I've been watching Raquel years and years. She really had kind of hot and cold performances, even in her Invicta fights and back and forth. But recently, the past 2 years, she's really had a level of consistency that I've never seen from her before. I was concerned versus Ana Carolina Vieira.
Right, that's a big match.
That it was a big step up.
I did double check this. They have had a match before. It was the finals of 2018 Worlds.
Yeah.
And Ana Carolina won by Ezekiel in the finals. So, I mean, that's a long time ago for these two to have a match at World Finals at black belt together. And then Canuto
covered that on the show back in the day.
Yeah. Canuto spent time in MMA and then has now been doing a lot more grappling recently. So,
which is funny. Her husband goes to MMA last week.
Yeah.
She's finished her MMA, and she's older than Renato by I think 10 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe 8 years, something around there. They make jokes about it all the time, and it's very funny. But it's very funny that she sort of sunsetted her MMA career mostly, and then he is starting his MMA career now.
You can only have one person getting TBI at a time.
That's how it be.
So, not really much happens in this match for the first 4 minutes of basically each round.
Yeah.
And then round one, Ana Carolina gets double unders, is able to pancake takedown. Finishes the match in 3/4 mount. It was a pretty dominant performance for the last minute from Ana Carolina. Second round, basically the same thing until the last maybe minute and a half, 2 minutes. And then Canuto takes an outside shot without any setup whatsoever.
It was odd.
And
I
then,
will say takes an outside shot. Ana Carolina intercepts it, stands up, jumps a guillotine on it, which is textbook exactly what you want to do here, especially for a good guillotine game. Goes high elbow on it. Raquel spends the rest of the round fighting out of that functionally for all the action of the round. Fighting out of that. We end up in guard. And I was like, okay, that is clearly a round for Ana Carolina. Ana Carolina is now up 2 rounds. In the third round, frustratingly, Canuto does the same
thing
takedown and gets countered the same way. And this was a lack of game planning judgment. Unfortunately, it's you got almost put away in the first round. And again, you're an MMA fighter. Canuto has had a long MMA career. You know how to get out of a guillotine. Maybe you think you're going to get out, but if you know you're down by 2. It was a very odd shot selection to go into the same thing that almost got you very clearly lost you the last round. It was very weird. I don't really have much more analytical kind of thought process other than it was very weird to see the same exact takedown you did again when it was countered so well the first time, get countered almost better the second time by Ana Carolina. And that was the match, and Ana Carolina wins a very clear unanimous decision here.
And this matchup makes a lot of sense because I think that the UFC is still trying to pull in the occasional person that has had some MMA experience into these matches. And Raquel Canuto, this was a co-main event.
And they're both Las Vegas based, and they're good. And she's good and she's exciting. She's really even upped her activity in the last couple of years, and I've been really excited to see where kind of her grappling has been going. It was just a weird game plan.
To go 3 rounds with Ana Carolina and not get subbed and not get absolutely blown out of the water is a big deal. Anna Carolina is an incredible grappler. Like the fact that Raquel was in it at all is
impressive.
telling for where she stands still, especially for someone that was in the finals. And, they were both in the finals in 2018, right? They've got long careers so far, and Raquel went into MMA. So I think it's a great match for her. It was not the most exciting match all the way around, and Anna firmly won it, but it puts Raquel in a pretty good place going forward for more professional jiu-jitsu, I think.
I was just really disappointed at that second shot.
The decision making was bad. She should have been coached out of doing that.
Yeah, that was a big error, and I just would love to. I would love to see a diversity of take. If you have to get the takedown, a diversity of takedown on display there, because it was just like it was a bad decision on the shot
or any setup at all.
Yeah,
like it was just she was 2.5 feet away and took a drop shot. Like,
yep,
it felt it's not a good decision to do that. Canonically, it's not a good decision to do that ever. And then to do it twice is tough.
Yep. So I got nothing else on that one. Let's talk about Mason Fowler versus Cristiano Troisi, a guy's name who I am not going to get correct. I heard the broadcast say it over and over again. And I was like, cool.
Troisi is what they were saying, I think. Yeah.
That's how you get it. This is kind of how, again, we thought this was going to go. It was Mason Fowler fighting anyone that's not in the top 5. He's probably going to look pretty good.
Fowler they said in the commentary, and I took note of it, Fowler had minus 2,000 for the odds on this one.
I think that's probably even like
generous
odds.
But still, minus 2,000. It was
that's what, 20 to 1?
Yeah.
Yeah, American odds wise. No. 100 100 is even.
100 is
so
even.
200 is a 2 to 1.
Yeah, it's
so
20 to 1.
20 to 1.
Yeah. So, and it went about as you expected. Troisi, weird move, pulled guard. Maybe that was his game. This is not someone that we've seen a ton of in the past.
No.
He's had a couple, regional wins at stuff that's impressive, and it's clear that he should be breaking into the pro level.
Man, Mason Fowler
at this point, but Mason Fowler's a tough draw.
But it is one of those things. Is you're in Troisi's position. You're like, they offer you Fowler on a main card to fight past invitation. You're like, yeah, man, I'll take that. Like, hey, man, you got to fight Gordon your first time out. You're like, all right, if it gets me on the card, all right, we'll go up there. Like, it makes sense why he took the match. But man, that is we talk about jumps up in competition,
right?
Man, that is a huge jump up in competition. And again, you can walk through the finishing sequence here. He hits an Imanari. Yeah. An Imanari choke. When's the last? So
been a long time.
So Jack, walk us through the setup here, and then I will talk and expound on my love of the Imanari choke.
Sure.
Because I taught this as a bonus thing on Friday. And I was like, it never comes up, but here's this choke. And then
here it is.
Yeah.
You predicted the future, Maine. All right,
actually, I might have not seen this yet, and then taught that, and then realized after the fact that it was hit because this was Thursday.
Oh, okay. So all right, Fowler gets a nice pass in there. We're at north-south, and then ends up getting rolled over after an armbar attempt. And so Fowler is now in guard and sets up a rubber guard, which is something we see Fowler do a lot, and he's probably the only person that I think is really successfully playing rubber guard at this level right now.
I think Fowler is the best rubber guard player in the world.
Hands down. I'm
trying to think of other guys at the top level that play rubber guard, and Magalhães used to do it back in the day.
Yeah.
And guys that have had like international level success that also play rubber guard. And like there are guys that play it and play it at a decent level.
And maybe play it here and there, but it is one of Fowler's staple positions. And
the other thing, Fowler plays it more like Williams guard than he does rubber guard. Like Fowler typically will not use the leg coming up over the top to hold someone down protractedly for a long period of time. He will use it to shift the omoplata, shift through. Like he doesn't just use it as a hold down position,
right?
Which a lot of the other guys that typically play rubber guard at like a mid-level pro will use it as a position to like work towards something in the rubber guard system. Fowler uses it to transition immediately out into something else, which I think is why it's so successful for him. It does make me concerned, again, because it's really bad on your LCLs and the ligaments in your knee. But again, Fowler for now is making it work and making it work at the highest level of anyone.
Yeah. So good for him. I mean, it's cool.
Man, it's cool to see a niche guard come back and like work effectively. He plays that shoulder guard though, which is much more akin to me whenever he plays it, like a Williams guard or like a Russian guard or like a high clamp guard, more so than like a traditional rubber guard.
It's funny that it's not uncommon to hear me say rubber guard doesn't work, and then Fowler is at the very top levels basically using rubber guard incredibly well.
One
but
guy.
yeah, he's the
It's
one
like the
guy.
Imanari doesn't work. Yeah, unless you're Masakazu Imanari. You're like,
Or Fowler, apparently.
Yeah.
So Fowler
there's-
sets up the rubber guard and actually moves to what is a pretty traditional rubber guard submission attempt, which he moves into the omoplata. And then Tracy pushes his weight back into Fowler, which is certainly a defense to the omoplata. It's typically a defense that I see work for people that are much bigger than their opponent, right? It's if you can really smash in and just be bigger.
Yeah, Zach, it works a lot.
That works well. If you're about the same size or you're smaller, you run into trouble with it, I think.
You run into this exact problem.
Or
Zach.
the crucifix. Like I kind of, when I saw that happening, I thought Fowler was going to move into the crucifix, but instead he moved to the Imanari choke.
He kind of does. So the Imanari choke, I call an Imanari choke any S grip hand over hand choke from the back when you have one hook with your legs. You have their arm hooked. Now, Fowler actually finishes more of like a short arm rear naked choke here, but he's doing it from a position and his hands are looped over. So typically the Imanari choke, what I consider an Imanari choke is less about the S grip on the hands on the neck, but more so traditionally when you do a rear naked choke, your hand, the choking hand, is facing towards you. For an Imanari choke, the hand is facing away from you and you're gripping down. And it's sort of the grip that Fowler starts with and then finishes over with this palm down rear naked choke grip. But to me,
also,
this is an Imanari. This is like as much of an Imanari choke as you can really hit.
I often think of Imanaris too as the angle that is on it, right?
Yeah.
A lot of time Imanari, or things that I would call as some variation of an Imanari, the hands are in front of the throat.
Yes.
It's not, whereas all the other chokes, especially in Nogi, it is your elbow that you're aiming to have in front of the
Almost
throat.
like a go-go choke or a bolo choke from the front.
Yeah.
But from the back. And it's like, I traditionally, the Imanari, so I'm looking at, you have a freeze frame of it here.
screenshot.
It's not quite an Imanari choke. I'll give you that. But
I'll call it a variation because you're excited about
he
it.
Sets it up in the same way you would do an Imanari choke from. He sets it up basically how you would do a crucifix from the back choke. A rear naked choke from the crucifix is functionally kind of how he
But he
does
also
it.
still has the omoplata in.
Yeah.
Which is
you
brutal.
say that in a way that I hate every time. I forget. You say it weird every time.
What?
Omoplata.
How are you supposed to say it? How do you say it?
Omoplata.
Omoplata?
Omoplata.
I don't know.
You have like extra U in there. It doesn't exist. And I respect it, Zach.
We
all have our hills to die on.
Apparently, I turned the O into a U.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't speak Brazilian.
We all have our hills we die on, and that's fine.
We should call it the Japanese name instead.
Shoppo Hiragani.
So, anyways, Fowler finishes that choke. It was a little over 2 minutes, I think, into round one.
Was it that long in? Yeah, there was some.
There was some back and forth because Triosi pulled guard, and so there was some passing that Fowler did.
Like if I'm in front of Mason Fowler, what am I? I'm not gonna take him down.
Yeah, you're probably gonna end up on the bottom anyways.
I'm gonna hope I'm Craig Jones and he shoots in me that one time in 2019. Like no, I'm gonna pull. That makes sense. Tactically, that makes sense. But man, Fowler's impressive. Zach, you got more on this one?
Nope, I think that was it.
All right, let's move on. Francisco Lowe versus Enrique Beltran. It ends in a draw. Zach, how much do you want to talk about this?
This was an interesting match. I think Lowe put on a dominant performance, I thought, actually, and then it was
And then he gets tired in round 3 and kind of gets moved on.
Yeah.
And it was...
But I wouldn't have called that an 8-10 round for him, but I guess they must have. Because I would have called it Lowe first round and second round. He did.
That's what I called too.
Lowe opened up with this. I've said disrespectful twice today already, but if anything was disrespectful in this, it was this wrist snap down, this double wrist grip snap. It looked like how you would take down your like 7-year-old cousin if you're just fucking around. Like it was nasty. So Lowe starts off with that.
You hit and go, oh, I'm happy I'm not on the other end of that. Because like you just catch someone with their feet and their head too far over, and then you run. This is like the wrestler coach move that you see. There's this video going on right now. It's I challenged my high school coach, and it's someone and going, and then it shows the coach doing essentially a variation of this, of like, get him, and then just like this weird wrist snap, and you're like, all right, you don't ever see it. Like it's you see it so infrequently, it's not a thing you really address. It's like a clean foot sweep. Yeah. You have someone just walk into a foot sweep. That's what it feels like, where you're just like, oh, I know. He doesn't follow up into it amazingly, but the fact that he hits it is impressive.
Yeah. Another interesting, like, fun little exchange that they had in that first round was that Lowe was kind of being, maybe, I don't want to say a little lazy, but it kind of looked like he was being a little lazy on top, kind of leaning forward on one foot, and Saeed was smart about it, reached forward, grabbed that ankle, and yoinked it up.
Yeah.
And Lowe did a cartwheel escape so that he didn't get taken down, but then Saeed, like, football tackled him, shoulder, chest to the face. It was nothing illegal about it, but it was cool to see.
Mm-hmm. A good count. Again, this is why you don't do lazy turn counters. We saw most famously Mateus Diniz versus Gordon Ryan. Mm-hmm. Mateus Diniz, Gordon sitting down, and then Mateus Diniz kind of lazily spins and turns, typically where in a lot of matches you'll like both guys will admit to a reset, and Gordon goes, oh cool, your back's turned to me, comes up, takes him down, and then that is the beginning of the end. It's like at these high level matches, man, if you do those spin takedowns, you have to immediately address and check back down. Because if you don't, and the other guy decides that today's the day,
they're gonna get you.
Which it is, because you're in like a high level competition super fight card. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think we're seeing this happen more frequently now than we ever have before. Where I think traditionally, a lot of guys have that unspoken rule of like, they play into those resets. Oh, both reset. Nowadays, as the sport has gotten better and better, the athletes gotten better, the prizes have gotten better, the prestige has gotten even more. We are seeing people get called out for some of those like lazy tech outs of positions and turns.
Well, also, jiu-jitsu was the only place that was acceptable. Yeah. Wrestling, if you turn your back, you're getting taken down.
MMA.
And you have to know. MMA, boxing. If you turn your back, you're getting knocked out.
Yep.
Boxing, same thing. Like all other combat sports, if you turn your back away to escape something, you need to be doing it with the utmost respect and the understanding that they're close behind you. They're right behind you. Yeah. I'm making a mistake that I have to make. Mm-hmm. That's the acceptance.
Throwing a hard elbow as I turn to get back.
Yeah, right. And so it ended up getting pulled back to the center. That was basically the end of that match. The second round, Lowe it kind of also felt like he was playing with Saeed on the feet. Like he was little foot trips, these sort of jab things that he was hitting pretty confidently. Mm-hmm. Like not hitting, I guess, but what was keeping Saeed running on the feet for a while.
I'm giving Francisco Lowe those exchanges the majority of the time, where it's like he is the one pushing the action. He is the one like sweeping for the feet. He is the one forcing Enrico to continually kind of go like out of the range and not get much offense off in the feet. It's Francisco Lowe doing a whole lot, but in the exchanges where he does decide to exchange, he is winning them.
And then Saeed pulls, which was smart because he was losing all of the exchanges on the feet. And then Saeed looks to invert. Lowe drops his hip to the mat and hooks his leg through like he was going to bolo. And then
I loved this transition.
Just didn't bolo and instead went for the calf crusher, which was fucking metal. And I absolutely love it.
I don't know. I'm very curious how he didn't finish this. It seems like he yanks down and then he decides he wants to do something else. And as he does that, credit to Enrico, man. Enrico makes all the right braces. He braces under the leg. He braces over. He changes the knee angle. Like
he also got his hips flat to the mat, which is extremely important in these calf crusher situations. I think most people still would have tapped here, but
it's
before any of that,
from the truck essentially is what it was a little bit different, but that's essentially what it is here. If you ever you should, if you are a practitioner listening to this show, watch this sequence, because this is how to deal with the truck.
Yeah.
If you can avoid having your knee explode and make it this far, Enrico is consistently doing the right stuff. He's pushing at the hands. He's pushing at the leg. He's turning. He's making an angle. He's never letting Francisco Lowe belly up and down and push the leg down.
Yeah.
Because Enrico is consistently, and he's doing the Wagner. He's playing to the edge of the rules. He's putting his foot on Francisco's face and on his neck and his thing, where it's like all of which are legal places to put your foot.
It's
and
not
it
nice.
forces Francisco to keep having to go, your fucking foot's in front of my goddamn face and move it. But it forces Francisco to do that and address that because he's getting pushed away by Enrico's foot and he can't just crunch down on the calf slicer.
And there was also a point where, while still in the calf slicer, Lowe transitioned to the outside heel hook, and it looked like that was looked really tight. Like
a Z-lock.
His knee was bent in all kinds of ways that were just not natural. Like I was blown away.
Doing the thing that I hate, which is guys like you're watching his knee explode, and you're like, dude, just have. It looked like it was like, this looks uncomfortable, but I'm not having. You're not making me watch gross shit happen to you, which I appreciate.
Yeah. I don't think it was about to explode, but it was it was right. It was very it was very, very close. But so that was that round entirely to Lowe, I think. And if anything, what was weird is that if anything, I would have scored round 2 an 8-10, a 10-8 for Lowe. If there was any round that was getting a 10-8, I think maybe in the entire event, it was probably that round 10-8 for Lowe.
My only thought is Enrico at one point has a very nice ankle lock that he kind of bellies up on, and that Lowe kind of has to muck with to get out of for a second here. That's the only reason I think you couldn't score this. So it didn't get scored a 10-8. That's my only thought process here, where it's like you give Francisco the first. I could see a very strong argument if you're going to do 10-8 rounds and give Francisco a 10-8 here. It is deep, it is in, and Enrico is like having to do everything he can to get out.
Both of them were deep and in. The calf crusher and the heel hook were both deep and in. And then, but the reason I bring up a 10-8 is not because I think that round necessarily should have been a 10-8. Like I can understand why it would be 9-10, right? It wasn't that. It wasn't.
But if this round's not.
If this one's not the 10-8, what is?
Is the third round for Enrico a 10-8? That's my question.
That's it too.
Is Francisco Lowe looks, and this is one of the problems that we've seen with Lowe repeatedly, all guys named Lowe, is they can get exhausted.
Sure.
And Francisco Lowe in the last round looks like he's up too.
Yeah.
He should be up both rounds.
He should be.
And so you're like, okay, I can kind of do whatever I want this round. As long as I don't get close to submitted, I should take a 10-9 here because this is the standard. It's very rare to see 10-8s.
Yep.
There's no way I should lose this. And then the round ends where Enrico, putting a pace on Francisco on the top. He's trying to pass. Yep. Not much of note is really happening. And then it goes to a draw, and I went, well, that's gonna be fun to talk about on the show.
What I really hated about it was that they said it was a draw, and they just announced it was a draw. They didn't give the scores. We don't know. It just says ruled a draw.
Yeah.
It's completely unclear why it was ruled a draw.
Yeah.
Right? You assume that there is one 10-8 round from a judge, maybe. Like there has to be. For a draw, there has to be at least one 10-8 round for a judge.
Yes. You have, or the other option, which is super, super rare, you have a 10-10.
Is that allowed?
It is allowed. Technically, is it allowed? You almost never see a 10-10 because it is highly... The UFC specifically requests that their judges do not do 10-10s. It is technically allowed in the unified rules.
Okay.
But if we're talking about like technicality, I don't think we saw a 10-10 here or a 9-9 because there's no point deduction.
Right, or a penalty was I was saying. There was no announcement of any penalty point deduction.
Lowe gets kind of poked at one point in the eye, and they kind of like wave it up. There's no penalty for that. They just make sure it's Francisco Lowe. He's gonna take his time, and he's gonna look for whatever medical leave he can get because he does that a lot.
Right, but also I think that was at the beginning of round 3, which then if the penalty was
I think
it was the beginning of round 3 because the other question was like, was it a scratch from Said's foot or something like that? Like,
I think it was.
Right, it's confusing how this ended up in a draw, and we don't get the judges' scores at all. They just say draw, and then the athletes walk off the mat. Like it's really confusing about how this ended up a draw, especially because if I'm scoring this, Lowe very much takes the first round, Lowe very much takes the second round, which means the third round is the one that's up for question. And if the third one is up for question, then how do you get the 10-8 out of that round? That makes no sense.
Hey,
there's no penalty.
If you get we said it earlier. If you get a 10-8 for Enrico in the last round, there is no way you don't give Francisco a 10-8 in the previous round.
Exactly.
My only thought here, and thinking about it kind of more in depth, is if low, and this is MMA, so the criteria is if technically, if the other guy doesn't get anything up, and it is only Enrico, which I don't remember the round super, super closely. If Enrico is seen as the only one who got anything done in that round, you can score it a 10-8.
Yeah.
And I don't remember any moments Lowe had in that round, other than looking very, very tired, looking like he was still in it, but not doing anything. That's the only way you can score it, a 10-8. But it is allowed to be scored like that in an MMA and a unified rules.
And I can see a situation where one judge scores the round one 10-9 for Saeed, because while I think Lowe had more takedown pressure, there was the like come up attacking takedown that Saeed got off of that lazy foot stance. Like I can see giving that, but then there still has to be one judge that scored something a 10-8 in here. Anyways, it's very confusing.
Maybe if you give the first round to Enrico, you give a 10-8 for Lowe in the second, you give the last round to Enrico, you can get it.
Maybe that is what happened then. Maybe the 10-8 was Lowe in the second round, but then that judge gave the other two to Saeed.
Yeah, which I didn't think the first round was
I don't think so either.
Close, but that, again, we're talking about draws, and again, we don't have the cards here, so
we don't even have the scores on this one.
We're kind of twiddling our thumbs like maybe this is how it came to pass. But again, it's one of the problems with the 10-point must system is a bad system. It's just easy to understand in MMA because it's what we use, but it's a really bad system. It's why I like the ADCC system, because you have open scoring with points.
Yeah.
Because we figured out that points are a great way to assess sports.
Right.
You do things and get them.
Turns out most points systems are very clear.
Great.
Anyways, so I don't know. This one was frustrating. Is just more of an example of why the judges' scoring should be open for sure. I would love to see scorecards so that we had some idea what happened here, because it's just very confusing.
I feel like a boomer now. I'd love to see points. Give me points.
Give me points.
Hey, man.
Points and buttons.
You get 2 points for a takedown, and what UFC could do it, man. You have a little graphic that pops on the screen. Takedown, 2 points, and then it's easy for the viewer to understand, oh, he took him down, 2 points, and they have a little GIF that plays. That's what I want. If we ever do an event, Zach,
like a bowling GIF,
exactly like that. Like a bowling GIF comes up. It's like, hey man, why? It's like, and it shows the guy being down. Cool, that's what happened. That's
into
what
that.
points.
That'd be great. Could they be sharks?
Yeah, man. You do
and lions.
sharks, whatever you want, man. But you just give a graphic for the user to see, to understand how points are being assessed.
Sounds fantastic.
Alex Enriquez defeats Shy Lily via submission and armbar in round 2. I think Lily took this on like 2 days' notice. I think Corey sent me over some notes. Shout out to Corey. I love that guy. He gave me the exact
2 days notice.
2 days notice. Yep, because Rocha was out on this. Yeah, this was a rough one, man. You take a late replacement versus Alex Enriquez. Very one-way traffic. Credit to Lily here. She gets out of the first round.
Honestly, she almost got out of the second round, too. She spent 10 minutes escaping subs here and tight ones over and over again.
9 minutes and 58 seconds. Yeah. No, she was probably 8 seconds left on the first one?
Less. It was like 3.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was functionally 10 minutes.
Yeah, functionally 10 minutes of escaping subs here
from one of the best
credit to her
in North America.
Yeah, right. Alex Enriquez is incredible. Shy Lily took the match with 2 days' notice, probably largely because she was local to Las Vegas, where this is being filmed.
Hey man, you want to fight? Want to top one in the world? She's like, cool. Yes, yeah. I'll fight you for sure,
right?
Which is one of the things
awesome
I love about jiu-jitsu is that jiu-jitsu guys, it's like, hey man, you want to fight a lion for $1? And they'll be like, hey, you're my town. Hell yeah, I'll do it.
I don't have any dollars right now. Could I do it for free?
We saw a couple of them on, and so Josh and I did commentary. Quick knock whatever. Josh and I did commentary fight to win 281 in DC here, and Seth at one point on the mic. Because there was a couple of, I think 3 or 4 matches that were inner belt matches, which Fight to Win doesn't typically do a lot of, but they will do if needed. And so there's a black belt that fought a brown belt fought a purple belt, blue belt fought a purple belt. Like there was a couple of them on the card. Yeah. And Seth was like, man, no other region will guys just agree to matches as much as you Baltimore people will just agree to fight anyone.
Yeah, we're not the brightest.
It was just real funny because, like, again, I love that MMA has a little less of that nowadays. I really love that jiu-jitsu athletes will still go like, hey, man, we need you to fill in for a co-main event slot. versus like pick your Junie Ocasio, and they'd be like, I'll fight Junie. You're like, Junie is gonna try to break your legs in half. Is like, I'll fight him tomorrow.
I understand that this is a non sequitur, but I also think that that's because the jiu-jitsu community does not really understand how good world-class guys really are, because you train with your like really good black belts in your gym, but the really good black belts in every gym are infinitely worse than the world-class guys at the top. So I think that there's a lot of false sense of confidence in jiu-jitsu where you think you're good.
I had the pleasure to watch the Corbett brothers on their come up run through. You commented a bunch with me for Copa Virginia. We got to watch those guys. You're like, oh, they are crushing other black belts. So we know like locally that are good competitive local black belts. And like, oh, these guys are running through them easily. And then we got to watch them at trials, and it was like that makes sense, like the levels. And we got to watch them actually that year not win trials. They fought each other and then didn't win trials that year. That was West Coast trials. But again, it's the level is wild. But I appreciate like credit to where credit is due. Shai literally coming out here saving, and Alex Enriquez coming on this card on 2 days notice and still putting up, man, for 10 minutes.
Yeah. The mental toughness there was incredible. Like she was definitely losing that match, but staying in it and
staying defensively sound and working towards a better position. And like, not a lot of people on these matches, you'll see them get the match and then you see like, ooh, they kind of implode. Didn't happen, man. Talk about the finish here.
What?
The armbar finish, or
so
the transition was just beautiful. For her to go from this in the second round.
So Enriquez is coming up on that sort of Kimura from side control where you kind of are trying to lift it up.
The standard head sit on the head, grab the Kimura, bunch it over. Doesn't do it.
Well, Lily turns to face down, like wrestler base, and so she's turned to turtle. And then Enriquez transitions that to a bicep slicer, then a Tariqa Plata, and then Lily does a really nice job rolling through a couple times trying to get out of the Tariqa Plata. Does actually
gets
escape.
The arm free, so Enriquez is now booting on the arm as they are both rolling. And I was like, yo, this is when the arms explode. The entire time I'm watching this, I'm like, this is the classic once a year. Twice a year, maybe, you will see someone roll out of a side control Kimura or like a Kimura from this position. And you watch the arm go first and then the body doesn't follow, and you watch just and it spiral fractures the entirety of the long bone or the forearm. And I was watching this going, I really hope that Lily is very flexible here so I don't have to watch this. It would be impressive. But like, it is the classic spiral fracture position in this roll,
and not what you want to see.
But
I don't want to watch that.
She gets out of it, and I was like, that is why. And Alex Enriquez goes, not getting out of this one.
Transitions to the laying flat traditional armbar position, and then Lily like rolls up into it and starts stacking out of it, and then just loses her balance slightly. Like I was so excited she was going to make it into the third round. She had defended so well, so many attacks. Like the transitions from Enriquez were incredible, and the ability of Lily to keep up defending them was really nice. I was really hoping she made it out, and then I think there were 3 seconds left. She lost her balance, ended up flat again.
What I loved here, though, is that we didn't see the thing I hate seeing, which is like, I'm watching your arm break and you're just like trying. It's like, no, Lily was actually ahead of the defense. And you saw Enriquez have to go, man, I really got to like, and you see her tighten her legs up there, and she fixes the angle where she needs to be, like, okay, I really have to actually stop you from rolling. I love that J-Rod and a lot of those guys have brought in I am just going to keep moving, and it is really hard to sub me if I'm... And Gary Tone used to do it a ton, too. It's like really hard to put guys away if they are not static. Even if they're getting like popped a little bit, like if they're actively moving, you would be incredibly surprised how hard it is to put them away. And I think a lot of it comes down to, in the room, I don't have to put guys away that hard, and so I'm not used to exactly what angle I have to make in that pressure with that speed to actually break through. And so you get into those, again, weird niche positions where it's like, oh, I actually have to break this one, and it's not like static. Like, that's easy to statically break an arm. But when someone's doing a roll through, like, it's really hard. And I've been on the giving end of this where it's like, oh, it's really hard to break this dude's arm if he's moving. And you have to figure out in the moment how to like, I've made this adjustment in the room, but I've never had to do it at speed and track you and then actually finish the break over the leg. Like it's a weird thing to be able to do. And I think more and more people we're seeing get good at the defense on that side.
And you're kind of a jerk if you do that in the room, like for normal people.
Yes.
At the world-class training level, you probably do it more, which is why we have guys that are taped up like crazy. But yeah, it was interesting to see.
Yeah. We're seeing it more and more. Two more matches on the card. Anything else on that, Zach?
Nope.
Kevin Carrasco defeated Sebastian Orvididez via TP choke, a triangle to a TP choke. It has been a while. Every time I see a TP choke, I just think of Submission of the Year 2017. Purple belt Josh Cisneros sliding into fight to win, and everyone was like, we gave it to him that year because it was like, dude, no one else hit a wilder sub than this purple belt kid, Josh Cisneros. Little did we know that Josh Cisneros would be Josh Cisneros, and it was like, oh, we're going to see a lot of this guy for the next couple of years. And every time I see a TP choke, I think back to that GIF, and I think back to like that early purple belt career back when Cisneros and I were both purple belts, and he was in my weight class, and had the fortune of never having to face him, which was great. But it reminds me of that.
This Carrasco was winning this match pretty handedly up front. It was round one. He was aggressive with an outside trip, and then I kind of laughed about this because he jumped to a triangle from inside the guard, like complete disregard for the fact that he was kind of still in the guard when he landed in the triangle. Like his leg was still inside. It was like a half guard triangle. He just didn't care that he was not actually doing this right, but then snatched up a Kimura as like a consolation prize, I want to say, and then was able to transition that Kimura into passing the guard. So did everything backwards, but ended up with a nice Kimura grip up and then passing the guard, and then
one of those, like, you can see where this is going from an early and again a lot of times in jiu-jitsu and even MMA you don't see big momentum shifts. That's why like Wardzinski's match with Felipe Andrew is so impressive because he's like down and then he wins. Like that doesn't happen very often. So when you have it happen in a match like this, you're like, yep, this is going the direction. It's going that direction. Going.
And Sebastian was able to hitchhiker escape out of that armbar that ended up happening there. I didn't think he was getting out of it either. I think
he was going to get out of that. And then he did, and I went, ooh, are you going to see a reversal? And then Kevin goes, no, I'm not going to have. I'm not going to let you get out twice.
No,
and you could see that when Sebastian made the transition out, you could see Kevin kind of very briefly kind of go, all right, I've got to put you away here. And like, I've got to tighten it up a little bit because I just lost this position because I was trying to be in a little quick and a little flashy. I have to sort of lock it down. That's why.
Well, then he also was a little quick and flashy for the rest of it too. But so Sebastian starts trying to knee cut, but creates a little bit too much space on the outside. He didn't really TP up in a way where the weight was in. He just kind of like stood his legs up, which then. Carrasco still had his hips under his own control and was able to scoot away a little bit, and that scoot away created the distance to throw a triangle up, and he did throw that triangle up. But what was interesting, I think the reason we got the TP choke, and probably the reason we don't see TP chokes very much anymore, is that Sebastian did that like very old school defense where you wrap your arm around the leg, which we don't see very much anymore because that's usually countered by an omoplata.
I like this defense. I also get TP choked not infrequently. And I'm thinking about it now and why you're saying this, and I'm like one of those things, just like the neurons connecting to like, that explains it. Because like, it's one of those things like you defend the triangle knowing that is available and hoping that they're going to overextend the TP and you're going to pass through.
Well, I think the more common counter to that defense is the omoplata. And I think the reason we saw that defense disappear was because the omoplata got so popular with that, and then you sweep off of it most of the time when you do that.
Especially in no-gi.
But the TP choke was there. It was an alternate counter to a thing. It was a not as common counter to a position that we don't really see anymore because there's too many counters to it. Yeah. And so you don't see the TP choke that much anymore because... Yeah, right.
It exists.
Because
like there's other
defense doesn't happen, and most of the time people are going to omoplata instead of TP choke. But here we see the TP choke. Yep. It's finished. It's great. I'm like, an incredible old school submission for an old school defense that it's nice to see.
What I love, and doing the show for years and years and years, I love like talking and watching the meta shift. And we have these like callbacks to things like I haven't seen that in forever. Like it's still a lot of these things are still very valid.
Yeah.
But it's like and it makes us kind of an analyze. Okay, why am I not seeing this very effective technique as much? Well, because it's the defense that we used to see. No longer.
Don't do it anymore.
There's a bunch of weird leg locks that we are traditions that we just don't really see as much in American because everyone knows, okay, inside control is good. So like all of these sort of fundamentals have changed with how we understand certain positions where it's like, oh, okay, I'm like we don't see the truck submissions very often.
But you'll see it come back because someone will realize that the jiu-jitsu world has forgotten how to defend it.
Yeah, we're watching that happen with the ankle lock right now.
Yep. We're shifting from heel hooks to straight ankle.
Yep. Remember back years
makes me happy because that's all I do.
They were like, oh, straight ankle's not good. And then I was like, yeah, as a purple belt, I was like, yeah, it's not good, is it?
I had that conversation with you.
Did you?
Yeah, and I was like, fuck that. Straight ankle locks are great. You have way more control. You're able to lean into them a little bit better. You can hang on to it for a long time. It's not a snap submission. And then you're like, no, you're an idiot.
Yeah, I said that.
Heel hooks are way more effective.
Absolutely probably said that, Zach. That sounds exactly like something I would say.
Anyways, I was right. You were wrong. I'll be wrong again in like 3 years when the meta shifts again.
That probably tracks. But yeah, it's very funny to watch. And as we kind of analyze more and more and more of these matches over the years, you just watch, like, to your point, well, why don't we see it anymore? What? It's because the defense that typically brought on this choke, we just don't see that defense anymore because of the other meta shifts for, like, how people use their own plot. And it's very funny that occasionally stuff comes back and you're like, oh, that thing that was good is still really good in this situation if you have this thing in this counter in this position.
Yep.
It's like we have 2 Suloev stretches on UFC in one night where it was like back-to-back. You're like, oh, that's Aljamain Sterling hits one, I think, and Abe Lincoln hits one as well. So, moving on to the first match of the night, we had João Assis defeating Daniel Mira via heel hook. This surprised the shit out of me. Because, again, we know João Assis. Help
Are
me
you
out
having a
here,
stroke?
Yes, Zach.
Asantis? Asanitis.
João, I got it. João. They have the umlaut over the A. I do not think that it's his name actually has the umlaut over it. It's a really common thing with Felipe Pena.
Yeah.
Everyone adds the umlaut over, not umlaut, the bacon. What's the bacon?
I don't remember.
They added over his name. Pena's name technically does not have the bacon on it.
Yeah.
And I've done it, and you used to look at a bunch of our description for the podcast over the years. It's like there was a year I figured out that he doesn't have the bacon on his name, and I was like, ugh, I'm not going to go back and change them all. But, defeats Daniel Mira. Daniel Mira is, I think, Mikey Musumeshi's first black belt, and is known here locally in like the Philly area.
Yeah.
As like a really phenomenal. Like him and Nick Salas have a bunch of like really interesting leg lock tutorials and like instructionals, and like they're good gi players, and like the huge depth of leg lock knowledge.
This was a leg lock shootout for sure. Absolutely. The whole time it was leg entanglement for the entire match.
Yes, you could tell where both these gentlemen wanted to win this match, which is cool. I know more about Daniel's game because he's more local to us. I wasn't as familiar with it's that meme. It's like I was not familiar with your game. That was what I was kind of coming here watching João. Man, dude was in it, and then eventually is able to hit essentially a counter heel hook.
Yeah, I think Daniel just got a little bit behind on the exchanges. It was a pacing thing.
Because Daniel was ahead in the first round, and in the beginning of the second round, he's ahead with the most of the initiations, with the heel hooks, where he wants to put. He's beating the foot pummel. He's getting João on the defensive. And then you see João figure out his timing, figure out the pullout, figure out where he wants to be, and start to take more ground away as round 2 goes on. In the pre-show, I had a point here I wanted to make about like counter heel hooks and counter leg attacks here for this match, and I forget exactly what the point was, but it is interesting to see. The other piece of the point is it is interesting to see how often we are seeing counter leg locks win, especially when you have here Mira has an ankle lock, and then João turns it
he's going for a toe hold.
Toe hold. We see this happen. We saw this happen at Giles Trials like 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
The toe hold, we are seeing very few toe holds finished, And more frequently than not, we are seeing toe holds countered to finishing heel hooks.
Yeah.
And it is something that I've watched in the last year. I mean, look at Nicky Rod versus Gordon.
Well, I
Like,
think the toe
that's-
hold
look
has
at-
been historically has been a snatch sub anyways, right?
Yes,
like
you
you're
break
just
the foot
grabbing
real
it
quick, and
yeah.
then like they're done.
And so it's more of a catch in the first place. And because it's more of a catch, you are not required to have correct hip and foot position.
Mm-hmm.
And so because you're not required to have correct hip and foot position and you're trying to catch a sub, you're often leaving one leg dangling somewhere.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that submission has caught up to the rest of the leg lock and leg entanglement world.
Yeah, because it sits behind everything, and the way that you do a toe hold is not facing the person, really.
Right.
It's usually kind of facing away from them. There are ones you can do forward, but typically it's facing away from the guy. There's very few, and it's a rotary one.
Yep.
It's like the ankle lock you can face away from them, but you start it facing the person, and you finish facing away. The toe hold, you kind of start facing away because you have to turn to get their foot turned.
Yep.
It's just a really interesting, I don't know where this is going, but we are consistently seeing people throw a toe hold and get counter heel hooked.
Yeah.
And we've seen it at Giles trials. We saw it here. We saw it another place. I think we saw it. I can think of a bunch of moments that we've had this happen where it's like, oh, the toe hold was not the play there.
And I also think that toe hold is something that people throw when they're starting to get behind anyways.
Because a lot of times what you'll do is you'll throw the toe hold and then it'll force the person to pull out and reset. A toe hold nowadays is being used to reset footlock exchanges more so than anything, where it's like, hey, you're grabbing my leg and you're into something I don't really want you to have. I'm going to yank this toe hold. You're going to have to let go and open my hip line, and then we can counter from there and I can do something off of it. We are actively watching a meta shift happen here with the toe hold heel hook counter. And I don't know where it's going, but it is cool to be like in the moment where I think that we are about to see development in this area. And I am on board for it because we are now consistently seeing people effectively counter good leg lockers with heel hooks when they go for a toe hold.
And so either we're going to see a shift in the way that toe holds are applied regularly, or we're going to see a movement away from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's already kind of it's more so a niche leg lock anyway, especially in the men's division. Women's divisions, you see them more frequently, I think. Men's divisions, you typically will see that aggressive roll and pull out.
Yeah.
Women's divisions, I think they're typically done because there's more flexibility in the knee, I think in the hip. You typically see them done from a closer range. And so when they're done, like there's more control because the hips are typically closer anyway to get it to move. Because if you toe hold a woman at range, a lot of times the flexibility is going to be there, so it's just not going to matter.
Yeah.
Men have tighter feet, tighter ligaments. You're going to see more of a reaction happen. I'm kind of playing this out real time of like why we're seeing this shift and why we're seeing like more women finish toe holds.
So maybe they're just being applied better because they're from a tighter position.
The mechanics are better and they're being used as a finish.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of the guys we see use them as like a positional tool to force movement.
Yeah.
So it's just it's interesting to watch kind of in real time. There's something here. And it was, again, a really impressive finish from Joao.
Yeah.
I kind of jumped over you here. Any other pieces you wanted to make on this match?
Nope, that was it.
So that was the card. Overall matchmaking was good. A little lopsided here and there.
Yeah.
But overall, again, I like the thought process for how the UFC is doing their matchmaking generally. I like that they're bringing back a consistent athletes that are exciting. Like,
yeah, I also don't really have a problem with the lopsided matchmaking on this, because the goal for them is not, their stated goal with Fight Pass Invitational is to get people that are curious about grappling to watch something that are MMA fans. That is the goal with this. And so I like that they have a couple big names for the people that care about jiu-jitsu. Like us, you have Ffion and Adele. That's a big draw for people that care about jiu-jitsu. For people that don't care about jiu-jitsu but watch MMA and are kind of slightly interested, seeing Mason Fowler absolutely stomp on Troisi is what they want, right? And so some lopsided matches in here that are exciting and fast and go like
the highlight reels.
Great.
And then occasionally you see matches like Taka and Rocha where it's like on paper like a closer match, and then you have Taka. The stylistic matchup of how Taka's going to approach that allows for a really quick sub. It's just, again, we've talked about it for years, maybe not as much on the show, but if you want to have a really exciting card to a casual person, you put world champion guy versus local guy.
Yep.
Because it's like, why? Because that world champion guy is going to be able to showcase his game and show the really neat, fun pieces of his game.
Yep.
If you put, let's say, I'm trying to think of if you put Kaynan Duarte versus Craig Jones, super exciting, on paper of oh man, two high level guys. The dynamics of that match aren't that interesting. Gordon Ryan and Yuri, the thought process, it's a huge stage. The dynamics of how those two guys are going to play isn't
not that great.
Isn't that exciting for a matchup? No. So having Gordon versus Philly Fresh, where Gordon can play and show his game versus Philip Rowe, that is how you get Gordon to be able to do the fun. Gordon versus Couch.
Yep.
You get Gordon to be able to showcase his game. Couch has a puncher's chance at being able to take Gordon. He has some good pieces. Gordon versus Wagner. Those guys are
Wagner's
different level, but
But yeah, I think lopsided matches are probably a good thing for these Fight Pass invitationals, at least for now, right? The goal is to get people interested in it. Lopsided matches are more interesting.
Also get those Cinderella stories, which happen less in grappling, but a guy or a woman that really on paper didn't have any business being in the matchup.
Yep.
Man, heel hooks are real. Lachlan Giles can still heel hook all the big guys at 2019. We can go, Lachlan Giles is world class and amazing. But
that's why we love ADCC, is because you get the underdog stories that come out, and they're giving
16 versus the 1, and you get maybe the 5 versus. You get the matchups where it's that guy should not, and then he does a flying triangle, and you're you get Craig Jones in 2017.
Yep.
Where your Australian trials winner, who no one thought would do anything. He'd been there before. He lost the first round in 15. You're didn't think he was going to do it.
Yep.
And then he goes in flying triangles or heel hooks. Was it he flying triangle low or flying Murillo?
I think it was Brillo.
Yeah. And the heel hook low.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you get those where it was who is this dude?
Yep.
And why is he so exciting? And you're you get those moments that can happen with those matchmaking, with that kind of matchmaking. And it's, again, the card was fun. It was well put together. I have kind of no closing thoughts on it. I like what they are doing for the matchmaking. They're bringing enough athletes that are top level in jiu-jitsu to get me excited to cover the cards, and they're bringing a good mixture of stuff that's going to create good highlights. And Ffion versus Adele of this matchup actually has stake and meaning in the context of the sport. William Tackle versus Achilles Rocha. You're two guys that are trials, winning level people consistently on that North American scene, in the mix together. You get Enrico Beltran, Francisco Lowe, two guys very similar, close. There is really, really good matchmaking here.
I love the matchmaking. Overall would be happy to watch another one of these, especially the pacing was really good. I think the event was good.
2.5 hours. I don't feel like my time is being disrespected. It's awesome. I would love to see one of these a month.
Yeah. I'm happy that it's
it.
out of the cage. I'm happy that that we're not using EBI rules anymore. This shift is all positive. And I really think that if I don't think they need to change anything, but if they gave me open scoring, I would be much happier. And if they gave me the judges cards, I would be much happier. But open scoring would take this event from I'm happy with to I'm really excited about.
Yeah. Again, I just want to see them more. I want to see more of them. I would love, again, I pay for Fight Pass. I would love to, you already have Polaris, you have EBI, you have CGI, you have Fight Pass Invitational. I would love to have a Polaris once a quarter, a more frequent Polaris, because Polaris I think is one of the best shows on earth.
Yeah.
And then a Fight Pass Invitational once every month, once every 6 weeks. Give them to me a little more frequently because you have really good. These get me again. We're covering this today instead of waiting until tomorrow for Worlds, because I think this one merits that. Very few other events are going to have me excited enough to cover them over Worlds. But again, it's a pro tournament that's paying the athletes versus Worlds that's mostly an amateur tournament, maybe or maybe not paying the athletes. For us, our driver has always been professional jiu-jitsu, and Ffion and Adele and Carolina, Raquel, Tackett, Mason, as guys all got paid. And that is our driver for the show. I want to cover the professional side of the sport.
Yeah.
IBJJF is a phenomenal tournament, extremely difficult tournament to win, but I don't think those athletes are being compensated appropriately for the level that they are required to get their bodies to.
And why try to smash it all in together? So
Yeah. So that's it, Zach. Any kind of closing thoughts on the week? Anything you got going on that's fun? Anything good to have you back finally?
yeah, it's been a while. I think I has probably one in the past year somewhere in there. I think I did a preview show at some point, but
Usually you do the majors, but you've been insanely busy the last year.
I've been busy, and I started teaching on Monday nights instead of Tuesday nights. And we usually, I wouldn't have been able to do Worlds this week if we had done it tomorrow, because I teach on Monday nights. Work stuff made me move my teaching day to Monday from Tuesday, so it makes me not really able to do the show as much because we typically record on Monday. So
yeah, Sunday or Monday. Sundays, it depends on the week, but yeah, Sundays.
The events that I covered, we typically did on Monday because I was doing Worlds, Pans, Euros.
Yep.
Most of the time I was doing the majors, and those have to be done on Monday.
Because you go to bed at a reasonable time, and we're not gonna
yeah,
rip.
I'm an adult.
Yeah, dude, I think we've done, Josh and I've done one, I think, where Worlds finished and then we did the show, and that's like a 1:30 in the morning recording on Monday, Sunday morning
on a school night.
And it's in my 20s, man. That was easier. We were doing the show a long time now. Those late night shows got like hard to do.
Yeah.
On a school night.
Not on a school night.
Which is why, again, one of the reasons I appreciate that UFC is, it's 2.5 hours. It starts whenever it starts, and it's 2.5 hours. Even if it starts, an 8 p.m. start time, which is 5 p.m. Eastern. Like, we're done by 10:30.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like my time has been disrespected on a Thursday evening, versus some other cards will start they just start too late. And then I can't enjoy. By the time the big matchup is happening, I'm annoyed I'm still up and watching jiu-jitsu. And that's why a lot of these cards we don't have people over for anymore, because a lot of us, it's 11:45 on a Thursday. I kind of want to go home. Or guys would leave at 10:30 on a Thursday. They have work tomorrow morning.
I go to bed.
Yeah. And then these cards, this is good. I'm super happy with this. I got nothing else really happening this week. I'm finally home for a full week, I hope, which is great. I'm very pleased about. My work trips and stuff got moved, and so we're good. I don't have to drive anymore, which I'm just ecstatic about, not having to drive another. Dude, it was so much driving. So I'm happy to be home. New studio space is coming along well. You can't see it. It's still a disaster behind the camera, but very happy to be down here and starting to work out this stuff. We had a bunch of mic issues, so I hope that those are actually fixed on the broadcast for you all. And that's it, Zach. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, my co-host,
Zach.
And we are the Grappling Rewind. See you on Matt, wherever it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.